Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another episode of OpenUp at the Workplace. I'm Gloria van Vonderen, a psychologist here at OpenUp, and today I'm joined by Torsten Müller from Urban Sports Club. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the importance of the mind-body connection. So what is the mind-body connection and what is the importance of it in the workplace?
Thanks for the question, Gloria. For me, and I think I can break it down best as on my own example, the mind-body connection is how the mind responds to what the body does. So in this case, taking the body first and then the mind. And a good example of that would be, how does your mind respond if you, for example, have exercised in the morning? So if you do physical exercise in the morning, what effect does that have on your body, of course, and then, of course, also on the mind, which ultimately is part of your body. It's not disconnected. And I think that's what the connection is about for me.
Nice. And do you see anything of that, like in research or study? What have you seen in your role?
So I think what has been measured by research, of course, is that there are certain things, elements or substances in the body that are being emitted once you're physically exercising. I wouldn't be able to quote all of them, but I think endorphins is a classic one. But I think there's also research already saying that there's much more than just endorphins, dopamines. I think there's also something that is close to cannabinoids that the body produces, and that has something that, of course, works on your mind as well. So some of the positive elements are, for example, an increased calmness, stress reduction, less anxiety. So all these things that I believe benefit to a very high degree also for you in the workplace are being, brought about by having this physical exercise. And I think especially at the beginning of the day, of course, before you can start your workday, but also, and that's another important or crucial element, also during the workday. So this effect can have a lasting effect for the hours to come that you're focusing on your work.
Yeah. What kind of things can you incorporate then during your day to have that short break?
I think there's two things or two answers to that question. I think one is the things that you can do yourself. That's mostly the easier thing, I would say. But also the other part of the part of the answer would be what kind of structural changes need to be in place in order to help this. And
you mean from an employer's perspective?
Correct. Yes,
okay,
exactly. Yeah, from an employer's perspective, from a, let's say, also more social or perspective as a society, and how do we want to work? How do we want to design our workplace and our work habits? But starting with the personal one, I think one thing that has changed the game quite significantly for me is starting the day with exercise, because then, of course, you carry that effect of the body into your work. Whilst if you exercise at night, and I used to be somebody who only does exercise in the late evening, of course, it has a lot of benefits as well. But thinking about your work life, I would argue that exercising in the morning brings you more benefits.
And then maybe for the ones that normally don't exercise, you're also done with it for the rest of the day.
And yes, you can sort of tick your box and say,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
I've done my...
Yeah.
But I think everybody who would start, integrating some movement, some exercise into the day and to start of the day will feel the benefits so strongly that I don't think there's just this tick a box phenomenon anymore. I think it gets way more than that, way more important. And the other part, of course, as I said, is sort of the structural part, more from an employer perspective as well. Allowing your employees or trusting your employees also to take time in the middle of the day in order to go for a workout and then return to the desk. And return to the desk, and I'm saying desk because that's my situation. I know not everybody works at the desk, but I guess a lot of the listeners probably do here. So returning to the desk in a different fashion, with a different in a different situation or feeling than before. So I think these classical things like having a slump after lunch, for example, if you incorporate some exercise in your day, you can totally buffer or balance that out. And
I should try that out then.
oh yes, yes. But that's the thing.
It's
you
real.
need to have this flexibility and that trust from an employer perspective that people can do this during the day.
Yeah.
They might take a longer lunch break, for example. But at the end of the day, there's probably increased efficiency and motivation that weighs up for it, or you have more stamina to work longer in the day if you had a break in between. So I think that's what we need to change.
Cool. And what would be your recommendation for managers, employers then to build that trust?
Well, I think you'd have to ideally you start it with an experiment. I think you at some point there's always a leap of faith. There's always something that you have to put forward in order to get the rewards. So start it out as an experiment. See how your workforce, how your employees respond to it. Of course, ideally measure it. So you can apply certain tools for measurement here, but I think it will be quite evident that you see the advantages coming from that change.
Yeah, and then you probably mean, for example, the decrease of turnover or maybe absenteeism rates.
Yeah, I think these are the classic ones. I'd say employee satisfaction, and I think it all starts with that employee satisfaction and the motivation, and that of course leads into better retention rates, better ratings for you as an employer as well. But also ultimately at the end of the day, it's better production. I mean that's what you need to have. Also, I mean we're all working for a reason, generating something at the end of the day, and I think that output can be better, of course, if you have a fully motivated workforce. And I think this particular aspect of exercise and putting your mind in a different position, I think that's really beneficial.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for your answers. And do you see anything of the rate of burnout or stress reduction at the workplace as well for that mind-body connection?
Yeah, there's we've done a research last year, even in the Netherlands, among employees, and the outcome of that was that we could see that there is a phase that we sort of look at that comes before the actual burnout, which we call the burn on, and that's a phase where you as an employer, for example, or especially employers, it's always such a big term. I think it's really up to the managers, the line managers, the people responsibility of managing. In this phase, there are certain things that you can detect and that you can still steer before it's too late and you see people sort of slipping into a burnout situation. So we see what were the markers that kind of come up in that pre-phase, which we call the burn on, and what ideally you can do in order to already start working against it or working with your managee in order to avoid that it gets any worse. And
what kind of signals did you saw in that research? Burn on. I didn't know the term, by the way, but cool. I love it.
yes, well, we coined something new here. Who knows? One of the things is that you have to listen to your employees. So I think the important part was an active listening and also to install a proper trust and that people can show their vulnerability, because what comes out of the employee is that they would voice to you that there is an increased anxiety, for example, or that they have certain stress symptoms. And these are the things that, of course, if you're very careful and, let's say, empathetic leader, you might sense these things. You might see or observe these things in your workforce. But ideally, you also get this voiced by your managers. So I think this kind of openness and trust is something that's very, very important. And if that happens, you will know, okay, well, I think there's manager that shows symptoms of anxiety, might be extra nervous before heading into meetings, or might be very, very calm and not saying anything and just looking overwhelmed. And these are sort of the early detection signs that you can see, and then you can engage with your employees in order to work on that and mitigate it before, as I said, it turns into something more severe.
Yeah, I think that's such a good tip also for the listeners and employers. And what we see in psychology as well is that indeed burn-on has different phases. So even before you get into a burnout, indeed, there are different phases before that, where you already can detect signals, where you can already, try to mitigate that indeed, and then move into maybe the earlier stage before it gets worse. And I think employers indeed have a big say in that, or they can help with detecting and building that trust. But yeah, also employees themselves can also be reflective of how they are and checking in with themselves.
Yeah, I think that's again also the parallel to the physical activity. There's always two sides to it, right? There is the side of the employee or the individual somewhat taking responsibility for him or herself.
Yeah.
But there is also the responsibility from the side of the organization, from the side of the society, in order to facilitate that. So it has to go both ways. You have to take care of yourself in order to take care of others as well. And I think that's essential.
Yeah, nice. So what can you do as an individual, maybe during the day, before we already discussed that, maybe also after work, to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I think one of the, also always breaking it down a little bit to also my personal experience, I think, and this is probably not something completely new, but I think the disconnection from everything that you do on the work side is very essential. And for me, that has always been something that I can do very well through physical exercise, because it does point your focus on something else. Especially if you're highly engaged in a physical exercise, let's say it might be a ball sports or something like that, you don't have mental capacity to think about any work-related things that might stress you out. I mean, try to catch a ball and think about your Excel sheet. It's not going to work, right? So this is essential for me. This has helped me. But everybody needs to find his or her own way. But it's important to take the mind away and to really don't let it engage with those work thoughts. And there are many ways to do that. This is just my personal example. Another thing that I think also helps a lot, and that's the stress relief that I mentioned before. I mean, it's just a great way to really decompose and to let out steam, to vent through the body. I mean, there's, of course, you can, go into a room, lock the doors, and start shouting. I think that's already a big help. I think it will help, but getting the whole body exercised and the blood flowing and everything, I think that's also a great way to let go of all the tension that you might accumulate throughout the day. And that's a given that it happens. I mean, sometimes you don't even notice, but it does happen. Yeah. So I think these are like two things. And then one thing that has also worked quite well for me, and I think also probably many listeners are always in the situation, okay, where do I start? How do I start? How can I get this off the ground? I don't have time for like 2 hours in the morning because I got to bring my kids to school and all these kind of things, and then rush to work. So what I think can also already help is like creating small habits of movement, small habits of exercise, and integrate them into your workday. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go and commit yourself to a gym class or whatever in the morning, but you can start small. You can get out of bed, and the first thing that you do is a stretch. Like, it doesn't have to be a long stretch. I mean, research says that if you stretch more or less 10 minutes over the week, that already has a good effect. So if you stretch, 1 to 2 minutes on a day,
sounds doable.
I think that's absolutely doable, and it will already change quite a bit. But you have to create this habit. It has to be, of course, consistent and repetitive. But once you get there, then you can take it from there. And then maybe you can leave the car and take the bicycle or stop using elevators. That's something that I'm fighting for quite a bit.
Oh, what's your favorite habit? Is that the elevator, skipping the elevator?
Oh, absolutely. It's the elevator. No, but it's actually the stretch coming out of bed. First thing is a proper stretch. I also need to do that. Unfortunately, played too much basketball in my life. So, but as I said, these kind of micro habits is where when you need a point to start, that's the point to start. And you can also incorporate that into the office, into the workday as well. You can always get up from your desk and take a small walk, do a little stretch at your desk. There's so many small things that you need to get started with before thinking of like always the really big picture.
Yeah, and I think also interesting maybe for the listeners to think about your own small micro habit that you can incorporate already in the next 24 hours. Think about it yourself and have a go.
That's a pretty good call to action. I love call to actions. This one would work. Come up with something that you can incorporate into your day and start with it tomorrow, and then just stay on it. Stay on it. Yeah, don't let it slide. Stay on it. Be consistent, and then take it from there.
Thank you, Torsten, for joining today's episode. It was very insightful and inspiring. I probably will think of, and I will probably do, a micro habit myself as well. And thank you, everyone, for listening and joining today's session. As you might know, we've partnered up with Urban Sports Club for that mind-body connection, where Urban Sports Club is all about employee well-being and fitness and wellness. Thank you for watching and listening to our episode. We hope to see you next time.